Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Frankie's Open Mic. I'm Haleigh Overseth, your host, and I am here joined today by Carol Hartman. Hello, Carol. How are you?
Good. Thank you, Haleigh. Glad to be here.
I'm excited to have you. So, for those at home who don't know Carol, Carol is an artist, and she is represented by Vedika Art Studios. And we've had a number of artists from Vedika on, and I'm really excited to meet another one. Carol does a lot of art that has some spirit of Montana infused in it, and it sounds like also some just enjoyment of some history and nature in our beautiful country here that I'm excited to hear about. So, Carol, can you give yourself a little bit of an introduction and give us a little bit of your journey in the art world and how you came to be an artist?
Yeah, I started actually, I know everybody says way back when you're 2 years old, but I actually did start memorizing things out. I grew up on a ranch 65 miles from the nearest town, and I used to memorize things so I would have those to be able to do with something in the future. And I have found through my life, I have resorted back to memories from those childhood things and put them into my artwork. But I ended up going in-state to Montana State University, Bozeman. Then I was down at the University of California, or California State University. I ended up starting my own business, and then I moved back to California at one point and started teaching. So I taught at Cal State Sacramento and Cal State Fresno, aesthetics and criticism of art, and ran the galleries. So I did gallery management and professional practices.
Oh, wow. So you kind of were all in the art world for just all good amount of time there. And that's, yeah. If I can get into the when you were memorizing things, can you give us just a little, my neurospicy brain wants to dive into that, because that's an interesting, I feel like creative people have a little bit of that very vivid photographic memory from a young age. So this is exciting for me to hear about.
They actually tore down some buildings when I was 3, and I know exactly what they looked like, what they smelled like. I would taste the wood or the rocks around it, and I'd feel, so I don't know how I knew these senses, but I had all the different senses that I could gather together, and I call them my pockets. So I have my little pockets everywhere. So I know the old Mitchell house, and just all these different things, because we purchased homesteads from other people, so we had other people's old buildings that slowly decayed. And I've got those. So the slightest smell or sound takes me right back where that was. So it just I was very aware of my senses, I guess, way back then. And everything was colored when I did paintings, crayon or whatever, in shades of purple, blue purple.
Oh, I love it.
And then I got a John Nagy art kit when I was 7. I don't know if you've heard of John Nagy.
I don't. It sounds kind of familiar. Is it one of those where you would have it was a box that you'd have some oil pastels, some color pencils, some crayons, some watercolors?
Yep. And I just have always been the one that painted, and all through school, I was the one that did all the windows for every week for the football games and the basketball games and stuff. I painted the windows. I would go out. I also like history, and I would go out to the old folks' home, retirement home, whatever, in Sydney, out in the eastern part of Montana, in 1960. And I would visit with the people there who are bedridden. Now they're close to 100 years old. That means they had to have been born in 1860, 1865. And I would talk to them, or I would let them talk to me while I painted their favorite Christmas card or their birthday card or an Easter card on the window with Ajax and poster paint, when it used to be able to get it powdered.
Okay.
I'd mix them together and I'd paint, and they'd tell me stories of homesteading and how many kids died of what disease or a horse accident, or it was just fascinating, the stories that I got from these people. And I think because of that, I treasure what they did back then. My family came out in 1880 to that area and put together a life for their family. And the appreciation to what they did. And then I look at it now and I see the changes that have happened through the years. We used plowing up fields and you get, good crops, and then we end up to put it in soil conservation. Put it back. It's not native grass. It's a different grass. We used to play hide and seek in our grass. That grass is not hide and seek ability anymore. I mean, so you can see people trying to return it. What have we done to the environment to make it such a change? So that's where I keep my pockets, but I'm looking at it now and it's like, oh, look what we've done. And
that's such a fascinating, it's like you're gathering data of history of is sort of, the history of actual people and not necessarily the history books. And you can get, studies and information geologically speaking about locations, but you have a vivid sensory memory pocket of information and data about that. Yeah. And there's nothing, we can create all the technology in the world, but there's still not a technology that can do what you're able to do with your mind and hold the memories of those spaces and then extrapolate that and put it into your art. I mean, that's really it's an incredible skill and an incredible gift, to be able, and that you're so interested and passionate about it. I'm sure only enhances your attention to detail about it, right?
It does. And then I do a lot of residencies, and I did one closer to out where you're from, in southern Nebraska, the Homestead National Monument. Mm-hmm. Have you ever been there?
I'm thinking that was one of the things that we would have done as a field trip when I was a kid kind of thing, or that my dad would have taken us on a trip to do, because dad thought field trip type things were also exciting for summertime. So I have a lot of that experience as a kid. So I'm with you on some of these sceneries that you're painting here.
They took the Freeman Ranch, and it's the original, the very first homestead in America is down there. And the reason it is because he knew he had to go to the Civil War the day the Homestead Act became official, and he wouldn't be able to grab that land he wanted. So he took the judge out and got him drunk. And then at 1 minute after midnight, they went down to the courthouse. He filed his papers and he went off to the Civil War. So he comes back and he now has Prime Ranch. Well, that's the ranch that they have put back in to this national monument. And the root system, they put the native soils back. The root system is 2 feet deep, and the plants are 3 or 3.5 feet tall. How did these people that come out in the early days plow through that without tractors and everything to make a home for our next generations as they come down the line? They had to have worked so hard. I mean, we owe so much to them, and then we just disregard it. And you can't. You've got to honor this stuff. So again, I try to find residencies that will give me more background, and I just was fascinated. You got to go check it out. It's really cool.
I love it. I'm going to have to. And so how have you sort of developed then? If obviously you have such a creative sense in this sensory capacity you have to appreciate your surroundings and to retain the sensory experience and be able to translate it. And, obviously there's many creative disciplines that you can use to translate this stuff. You could do writing, you could do, filmmaking, you can do any kind of variety of art. What is it about painting and the way that you're able to tell that story through painting that really resonates with you?
I turned to painting because I thought it was the only way I could involve the people. I actually spent about 25 years doing interactive installations because, again, I'm trying to get the viewer involved, not to sit back and look at something, but to become part of it. So I did these interactive installations, and a lot of them were based on biases and prejudices, decisions people make. And I'm always looking at these decisions they make and what is the result? What repercussion came because of that decision? Throughout our agricultural, through everything we're doing, what decisions did we make? So I would do that with people and let them make decisions, and then they'd see themselves on instant replay and kind of as, how do you feel about the decision you made? I have no control. It's up to them. And then, of course, I'd write on walls and stuff. But I quit at the university. You get a paycheck there. And when I left the university, I was like, I can't keep doing these because there's nothing to sell. and it's a little expensive. And it was also getting difficult when you do an interactive installation. You've got 3 days to put this thing together, maybe 4. And I mean, it's the whole gallery, the electronics, and I like electronics behind my art. That worked good, but I'm not an electrician. And I was in DC and I put together a show that worked perfectly in California. I get to DC, they have metal in their walls. Who knew? I mean, I didn't know this anyhow. And so all my video casting just went ka-chicka-chicka-chicka. So I had to sit down and figure out how to split cable and get everything monitored to work. 20 minutes before the show opens, people are out in the hallway and the stairs.
This is not when there's YouTube for you to be able to look up a quick video on how to do it. This is, well, I guess this is going to work or it's not.
Yeah, well, this was in the 80s. We didn't have any YouTube-y stuff in the 90s. We didn't have that. And oh my gosh. So I thought, I've got to come up with something easier, but yet let me tell a story and get people involved. So that's where I figured the painting, I can do them in large canvases. You feel almost overwhelmed by the presence. And then you start looking at the detail and you see stories in the detail. Or you could just sit back and look at it and walk to another gallery space. I mean, it's up to the person's choice, but it really is fun to involve the people. But yet I like painting. I don't use a brush though. I never use a brush. I put on and I use my hands, paper towels, trowels, anything, sticks. I use things and my hands mostly. No brush.
I love that. There's a lot of playfulness to that's the kind of thing that I really like. In the abstract art that I do a lot of oil pastels, partly because I really like that tactile experience of playing with it.
Yeah, so, you're right in it. If you get a brush, you're removed, and I start getting more detail. But if I get rid of the brush, I'm directly involved in it, and you get more expressive, I think.
I think so, and I think there's more of the energy of whatever the story is you're telling that comes through, right? And I think that is something with abstract art. And tell me your thoughts on this. That with abstract art, you have room for interpretation in what the truth of this image or this thing that you're presenting is. So people have the capacity to find their own way to get a story into it, right? It's not just an image the way that a photograph of something is a replication of an image, right? Or a sort of direct representation of it. The abstract gives a certain amount of room for your imagination to play into what's being presented.
Yeah, it's that involvement. You have now involved the viewer instead of just letting them sit back and look at something. They've got to become involved in order to appreciate it. I don't know. I'm glad you see it that way. That's great. Because
I do. There's so much energy to be received in, and that can be kind of generated in that involvement and that engagement, right? And is that so? When you do have your residencies or your different sort of like maybe your art shows and things, can you maybe talk about that? Like, how does observing other people observing your work sort of like what's that energetic sensory experience for you, and how does it play into further work that you do?
It has been enjoyable or interesting, because sometimes people will look at things and see it in such a different way. I did a show in it was Bakersfield, and I took 2 galleries and I had interactive installation in both. And like if you were in the left gallery and I'm in the right, you move, you hit infrared detectors, and you change the image on the left side of yours and mine. I move and I can change the right side image on both. So together we could dance but never be in the same room if we figure out, if we make the same moves. So, but the whole thing was on message givers. How do we trust people who give us information? And I had some images where these people are bad or lying or evil, and some that are good. I mean, so I had a variety. That was my game plan. I get to watching what people are doing, and the women tended to always kind of make a complimentary, try to make it synchronize. Not the men. The men,
Are we surprised?
exact contrast. All it's like, what is going on? That was not part of my plan, but
But
it
that's
worked.
an interesting case study on sort of like masculine and feminine energy, just watching that way, the way that played out.
Yeah. And then I did one at UC Davis at the Pence Gallery, and it opened like 3 days, the third day after the Gulf War started. Now, the Gulf War, nobody went out of their homes. We all sat there and watched bombs go off and were just devastated. Hardly anybody came to the show. And by the end of the month, it became the voice for what we all thought, because it was all about choosing to acknowledge the war, or you could just, I mean, you could acknowledge it or ignore it. But there was that one line in the sand. You couldn't get rid of the one line, because it was always, Bush had a one-liner all the time. And it was like, there was that line, couldn't get away from that, but you could sit on the beach or you could look at, I mean, it was a good voice at the end, but nobody came, hardly anybody came to the reception. So you never know. And then I have found that there's lately with my larger ones, it is, people are amazed with it, just that take the time. But I also find Europeans take more time to read through than most Americans do.
That's, I mean, that's a little bit interesting of an exploration. I mean, in culture, right? Like the United States does have a very sort of hurried culture and sort of, oh, I don't have time for that. I don't have time to pause and absorb
Yeah.
everything there is to be absorbed here, right? And does that, are there things that you notice about your work, again, sort of through that perception that you can see in the different ways that cultures sort of interact with your work or don't?
Well, I find the European will take more time with some of the interaction things that I've got going on. But then I find the older people, well, they tend to migrate more towards anything that has to do with the homesteads. And they'll come and get commissions for me. I like to go out to people that are selling their homestead, because
Mhm.
that's a hardship. You know, you've got 3 or 4 generations that have worked hard to give that to their family, and now you're going to sell it. I mean, you know, but yet nobody has taken it over. You can't maintain it. I mean, you have no choice. So their hearts are broken. So I go out and I spend a day with them and hear their stories, get all these stories put together. And then I'll do like a 4 or a 5 foot painting and try to incorporate the stories within it. And if they cry when they get it, I know I hit their heart. It's like, because
If
then,
I make you cry, I know I did it right. I love it.
well, I mean, that way they have something, even though they sold the ranch or the farm or whatever, their kids down the line can say, you know, great grandpa used to sled down that hill, or that's where the hay yard was, or, you know, the stories are still there. So I get to keep those stories for people. And that's kind of rewarding to find a way to keep the stories.
Well, that is a brilliant gift for you to give those families. And I would say not just for the families, but really for sort of the broader collective in a lot of ways, because, you know, times are shifting and changing. We are moving into different sort of ways of forming communities. A lot of people are, you know, and I'm sure Europeans have these different kind of experiences too, where, you know, they are shifting to things like vertical farming, for example. And so like you're not needing the kind of farmland usage anymore that previously was needed. And that's kind of maybe a way that the United States, as much as we're in such a hurry energetically, you
Yeah.
know, we're so very behind in that. Like we're not upgrading to those kinds of things. We still have vast farmland that, instead of being allowed to be sort of nature and just grow as it is and use a smaller portion to do
Yeah.
something like vertical farming. But some of it is because there's those stories that families have and don't know how to carry on without keeping that. So it's, you know, you're also doing a service to the collective in that you are allowing these people to let go of old ways of doing things, because it's time for society to shift forward and find the new community paths, right? But it doesn't mean that you don't want to honor and love what was. You just know that it's time to make room for something else. And so that's such a beautiful way for you to encapsulate that for them.
But yet I feel so sorry for the families that just, they want to keep the land, but they can't make a living because the big corporations are buying things up and they just can't make a living on their little land. I mean, and it's a choice of a career, and we need the ranch, the farmers, we need those people. And to see them sold to big corporations is kind of frightening. So it's a toss up. It's a real toss up as where we're headed, what we're doing. And I worry about that, and I worry about what kind of pesticides we're using, what's doing to the soil, what depleting the soil, what's it doing to the water. We're all drinking it. So I'm watching the environment and how we are affecting that environment with all these decisions that we make. I mean, look at the tornadoes and the hurricanes and
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the wildfires that we have that are out of control. I know this is kind of a conversation about how do we incorporate creativity and art in ways that can positively impact these spaces, right? And I do love that you are doing that, and that you're willing to find ways to incorporate into broader society the things that you do, right? And mixing these stories and history, and again, kind of showcasing where we've been, where we're going.
Yeah.
Do you do any kind of explorations in sort of like the possibilities of what could be? Like if we did, instead of selling, old homesteads, started to turn them into communities. I don't want to say hippie communes because I know there's certain connotations to that. But, if we started to do sort of community building in the sense of sharing on a level that doesn't have to be instructed by corporations or other things, right? If we started sharing amongst ourselves and creating communities there, I mean, are there any kind of explorations that would come to mind for you, and how you might explore that with art?
I've been trying to figure out a way to be a little more positive. Because I am talking about all these things that are going on, but I've looked at this thing. It's called the Anthropocene, and the Anthropocene, it's mankind and the era, and it's the tipping point.
Mm-hmm.
And are we at the tipping point? And my goal is to show the tipping point and hopefully find people who become aware of the fact we're that close and get that, because I know we have intelligence out there.
Mm-hmm.
Where are these intelligent people that can help us find a way to produce? And I don't know that. I'm not one of those people, but we do have them out there. We need to call them forward and help us save save as far as we can this era that we have of our humankind on Earth. I mean, I think there's personal evaluation here. I think there have been other eras before us and because of climate change or whatever, because some of it we cannot change, but we could slow it down if we would just get smart. But so what do we do? How do I show the positive part?
Mm-hmm.
Not just the warning.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know yet. I haven't quite figured that out.
Well, I think a lot of us are navigating that, aren't we? So for me, I get to sort of like my abstract art, my writing, I'm more in the world of science fiction and fantasy, but not that the interesting thing about, I think, science fiction and fantasy is that it really is future vision, right? Like you are projecting what you believe is possible, whether it's for humanity or if you're, out in the cosmos with your stories, right? And so for me, it's maybe kind of easy to explore those possibilities. But like, this is why I think some of the things that Siddhant is doing with Vedika is really interesting, because he's bringing together different artists with different stories and like blending performances and blending shows and artists together. So like between yourself and myself, like this homestead, very grounded earth stories that we've been living in the last couple centuries of this human era, right? And the kind of space that I live in, like very outer space, right? Like where's kind of the bridge that these kinds of concepts, and I think that's a part of what we do as artists, right? Like we bridge these concepts in people's minds and have these conversations through sensory experience, whether that's visual, auditory, however you put it together. I mean, what are kind of your thoughts on that, and how you can sort of blend together multidisciplinary art sort of facets or concepts to
I don't
sort
know.
of help others who are the brilliant minds that will see the how to get there.
I don't really know how we're going to do that. I've looked at biases and prejudices that way, but I haven't figured out how to do these. I have to tell you the bias and prejudice one. I sent out 2-foot by 2-foot boards all over the world, and then had them do a painting of an early childhood memory, something like walking through the grass, or sitting on grandpa's lap, or eating at, something real early childhood.
Mhm.
And then I put them up. We had a 3,600 square foot. So it was 60 by 60 foot gallery space. And I had all these paintings put up that people had sent back to me. And all I had was just the label of the art piece on the front. And you come into it and you go, oh my God, that's my memory. I had the same memory as this person. And then you open it up and it's somebody, different race, different ethnicity, different income level. I mean, because I had all that data gathered. You wouldn't know it until you opened up the thing and looked at the bottom, and you realize we all had same visions, same dreams, same experiences. When did we learn to be biased and prejudiced? When was that? What decision did we make at that point? When was that? And how did it change us? What were the challenges or the repercussions from it? So I look at those things, but I don't really know how to answer your question, is that I don't really know how we can
Well,
change things.
we're having the conversation, and that's the start of it. But I love this. I love this idea of these different memories you're talking about, and that it shows again, this is the importance, I think, of creatives and artists, and like the value of what we call entertainment, right? That is not always necessarily considered to be a sort of primary necessary function in some cultures and societies. Certainly, I know I struggle with that where I grew up. And I think it's a brilliant thing, though, to showcase it doesn't matter where you come from, you're still human. And this experience has so very many things that are alike. And what makes it unique is your perception of it, your story that you tell with it. And that's why it is so valuable to share these stories in whatever ways that you can. And I think that's where it starts, just starting the conversation and starting by helping other people recognize their connectedness to everything in the world, right? And nature too. I think that's something that, and again, tell me your thoughts or your feelings on it. I think that, in the explorations that you do of these sort of old farms or these old ranches and that kind of thing, you are exploring nature and humans' relationship to nature, right? So maybe there's some kind of a show you could do that would be like, you have these stories of people from childhood and their human experience. Like, what sort of experiences do you have with nature? Share those. And what kind of parallels and interconnected sort of experiences with nature do people have that they would look at and say, like, oh yeah, that's my memory of being by the river or being by the ocean. That's my memory of being out in some trees, smelling the flowers.
Oh, I like that idea. I have to show you this. When you give me a good idea like that, I
love it.
go research. This is the kind of stuff I do.
Oh I love that.
Well, I've got to search and get all the information. And I mean, this was just the day before yesterday, trying to get some more information on different epochs of time and what we are going through. And it's like, I love to start with a gem of an idea and then just blow it up as far as I can, and then figure out how to get the audience involved in it. So it's going to be exciting to keep rolling. There's no end.
There is no end. Infinity is infinite, and we have access to it. And we're just kind of getting to a space where we understand that again as humans.
Yeah.
And I wonder if maybe. So I've talked about this on other podcasts, and I think I talked about this with Fina, that when you're in that sort of flow state, whether it's, she was talking about it in terms of her interpretive dance that she does. But for artists, and I certainly experience this myself when I'm doing abstract art, that not having a focus of an image gives you a lot of space to allow something to come through. And sometimes you're like, not always you, right? There's something else in there.
It was a hard thing is when I'm doing the commissions for people when they're selling or something to do with the landscape. I organize all these thoughts, and then it's a matter of executing them. It's easy. Bam, you got it. Abstracts are hard. I spend so much time because, and I'm a Capricorn. I like control, and I have gotten into abstract, and it's like
it makes so much. I'm a Sagittarius. I like no structure, so
yeah, it's
why we get along.
Yeah. Well, it's like my best friends are Sagittarius, so I like that.
Oh, my best friend's a Capricorn, so like that's so perfect. I love it.
But I struggle, and it's like it's not there yet. And I got to figure out why is that piece not done yet. And I just work it to get it to come out, to say what I want and get done. Where with that landscape, bam, you just execute what you got in your head. It's easier. So yeah, but I you know why I got totally into abstract. I had to evaluate what do I mark likes on and loves on when I'm looking at things on YouTubes and whatever and or Facebook. They're always the abstracts. It's like, well, if I like them so much, why am I? So I've actually veered more into the abstract because that's where I find more satisfaction. But now the challenge is how do you tell a story and still keep it? So I've got to get that concept. And I was having problems, I told you I taught aesthetics and criticism, and I like to talk kind of about the significance of work and everything. And I found I was going backwards since I left the university and moved back to Montana, and we're all kind of happy and just kind of painting pretty little trees or something. I don't know. And I thought I'm losing it. So I took a class from the Royal College of Art, which was fun. It was, we had to take it. It was 15 of us from all over the world. We take it at night. Well, daytime for them, night for me. So I'm up at the studio at 3:00 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
Trying
That's
to get
a commitment. I love it.
Trying to dodge the bears and, make sure I get there safely in Red Lodge. And
watch out for Sasquatch because you gotta, right?
But it helped bring me back to trying more with concept, more with where is the significance rather than just, I had one show and they put my show up as pretty pictures instead of as story. And I got so upset, I swore I was never going to do another landscape again in my whole life at that. I mean, because I was so upset. And I realized it just was a matter of they didn't tell the story. They just somehow thought it was pretty pictures.
Well, and that's, again, that is kind of the thing with abstract that becomes more involved and more interesting is that you, like you said, you do have to really look at it, pay attention, see what it is you are taking away from it. And is that the same as what the artist thought it was, right? Yeah. And that's something that, there's another idea that I always like, that I've kind of wanted to do, like I think would be a fun show, like having abstract art and then interact with people and ask them, what do you see? Right? Like, what do you see here? Like, I might think that, like, I did this abstract art and what I think looks like a phoenix looks like something else to you, right? Or something comes out of this abstract art and I think it looks like an ocean scenery, but you see an elephant, right? It's a lot about perception and kind of the interesting things that our brains make patterns to see, and kind of shifting that perspective and realizing that, like, oh, maybe I was actually sort of stuck in my own train of thought and not letting new things in because I didn't see that.
You didn't see it. Well, I've done some that I don't want people to know what I put into it because it taints the way they see it. And I did a piece about the Berkeley pit in Butte, which is one of the most toxic pits in America kind of thing. I don't know if you've been over there. They have to shoot cannons off to keep the birds off the lake because if the birds touch the lake, they'll die. So it's a toxic place. And then it's filling up with water. It's mines. It's all these mines miles deep. Well, now they've abandoned it. So it's kind of filling up with water. And now it's going to pollute the city water system. So now they've got to get it off. And they've got a reclamation project. It is working quite well. But the thing is the water will always be polluted. I mean, there's no way to not be polluted. So I did this piece and it's all layers of toxic things. And I love neo-McGilp and I love my petroleum products that I use with my oils. So I've got 2 layers of quite toxic stuff. And then I started using lavender oil. So I'm using lavender oil as my medium. So I've got, people think it turned out really beautiful. It's really great. And it's like, do I tell them that it's got 2 layers of toxic underneath? And then it's got a little bit of little twiggles of toxic kind of coming through in a couple places. You can see the toxic, which is the same as the lake. That's the way it is. But do you want it in your home? Yeah.
Do you want it in your home, or does it need to be behind protected glass where it's not going to cause any problem?
Yeah.
But even that is really an interesting exploration, right? And
yeah,
because when you say that, the first thing I think of is Chernobyl. And Chernobyl is kind of that same thing of like, what can you do about that level of pollution? Well, we humans left that space, nature took over, and nature created mushroom and funguses that could like process that in the soil. And so like, there's a lot of these sort of like, I'm glad they have a reclamation project. I'm not saying don't try to help, but there's also a lot of, and this is a little bit kind of getting back to holding the stories from our past, right? And kind of having that capacity to remember what things were when you were a child, because you can kind of see that like nature has an incredible power to heal itself. Nature has an incredible capacity to harmonize and to provide what we need if we give it the space to do that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's our continued meddling that is just slowing down the process of nature developing what it already knows how to develop, right? Yeah. Like the evolution of humans, even like we get to where nature needs us to be. We could like, so what is it? And that's maybe like, how would you do an exploration in art that way with, okay, how would you present that sort of idea with that? Like
if you compared it, like we said, with Chernobyl, though, I mean, it was a devastating situation, but now you're seeing deer and you're seeing animals there and wolves. And they have adjusted. Maybe we don't know yet what it does to the DNA. We don't know what it does to our children and our children's children for humankind, but it does. It would be a fun experiment to see how it would, boy, I mean, look at that thing in Butte. That would have devastated the whole town. So I think we have to clean up our act too, as best we can. Well, we have to quit making the act, so we don't clean it up.
This is, I think that's kind of it, right? I think it's that we have some of us who are busy trying to clean up, but then there's so many that are just like still making mess.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of, that's a little bit that dance that you need to try to do, like the show that you were talking about, like, do you want the contrast or do you want things to line up and harmonize? Right. Yeah. And how do you flow with that energy? But again, it just like, for me, it really does come back to these kind of conversations generate because of the creative explorations that we do.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, did you see the one I did of the train derailment? Did you get the thing they sent you?
Oh, yeah, I have. And the links will all be in the bottom for people to find. But yeah.
It's a 20-foot long one. That one is all about infrastructure. We did not take care of the infrastructure properly. The thing is, nobody talks about it. And it's like, if 3 of those cars would have burst open, we would have polluted the whole river system. It'd have been down to you. It had gone through the Yellowstone, Missouri, and Mississippi. 3 of the cars didn't break. Luckily, it didn't. So all we had was the sulfur, which solidified into rocks, which is that same color I used. I went down there when I wasn't supposed to. I kind of got kicked out.
I
but
like that as being a little bit
wanted that.
dangerous with the
This is
research
the
you do
color of
for your
salt,
art.
and this is the molten asphalt. I mean, I wanted those colors, so I was down there collecting stuff along the derailment. But but anyhow,
That's like I love that. That's like the best kind of rule breaking,
yeah,
like gathering data in the field for the art of depicting the story of what happened. I think that's really amazing that like now let's just veer off for a hot second then, because before we started the show you were talking about your doing the Oregon Trail in a van that you did. And
yeah,
okay, so like let's go into that. This is part of your kind of technique or process as well, to go to places and
yeah.
really get into things to gather your research.
Well, what I did is I got all these books I could, and I researched all of the significant points along the Oregon Trail. And then I got a map out and I circled all the different places I need to be and what the story behind it is. So then I got a travel trailer, not a pretty one, just a regular old travel trailer with a little V in the front. And I made a little kitcheny thing there, and I put solar on it. So I had solar power, and I had my cot on one side and my paintings over. I could stack them on the other side. And away I went, me and my dog, away we go. And 5 weeks on the Oregon Trail, and we would park off on a side road where there was something significant happen, or the trail or God knows what. And I was parked out there for the night, and I could catch the sun in the morning or whatever it was and do the whole trail. And yeah, I was telling you earlier, is I parked where I didn't really belong a few times. And I was so ready to give them the whole speech about how at my age, yes, I'll go down your little road if you want me to, pull a trailer. You really think so at night? Fine. But anyhow, I never got to use that excuse. But I did get to go
We
to
need
a
to
lot
take
of
another
places.
trip.
Yeah. Well, and then I had a residency out in St. Louis. So I wanted to get over to St. Louis where they built some of the boats. And then I followed the Oregon or the Missouri River all the way back. So I could follow where the steamboats went and where they docked and how many were lost. I mean, because there were so many that hit snags along the way, and all the way up to Fort Benton, and then spent some time at Fort Benton. So, I mean, I love to research the history or whatever it is. I research it before I begin these big projects, which are usually a big series that I end up with. I don't know. I just research.
I really love that. So like, and what, again, more ideas that come to me. That here's another idea for you. Like when you're talking about the river and following the river, it like made me think of how we've really relied so much on water as a species, right? Even for our technology and our commerce and the spreading of our civilization, right? Like that is an interesting exploration you could do in the history of this country, and how the waterways that we have been really integral to the spreading of our technology, our civilizations in different, pockets and things.
It
I mean,
was
the Oregon Trail is one way doing the overland thing, but you
the
like
old, well, they say that there was, I don't know how many people died all along the way. Every so many feet, there were the people that died, but it was still safer than going by boat, because the boats, most of them got hit by snags. They went down, they lose everything. So people felt, and it cost more. So they would go by land, and I don't know how they did it. So I've done some paintings in Wyoming going over the South Pass. If we didn't have the South Pass, we wouldn't have been able to settle the West like we did. It would have had to have been by river. Again, we're going by river again. But the furthest you can get upriver is Fort Benton, and that's pretty much dead ends you there. So now what do? You've got to still get further over. Back in the day when they were doing that, there was gold that was being mined. They were trying to get out here not only for farmland, but they also wanted to get to the gold. I mean, so it was just, it's fascinating to see how the West was formed, and how back when the Civil War was going on and the Union was getting all their people. So the Confederates they circled around and they started more with Idaho and with Western Montana. So, I mean, it's just, you can see to this day, the political attitudes of people come a lot from where they derived.
That is such an interesting exploration there. And again, so appreciate that you do this through art and abstract and blending history and all of these different parts of human storytelling into it. But that is really fascinating too, to think about, like, all of these things that we did have, like, well, if there wasn't gold, we wouldn't have been drawn out there. So
Yeah.
nature had to have produced that gold and put it there so that these human animals on this planet would want to go out there. Like, I mean, that's a thought that I do have sometimes. Is that something that I don't know that we always appreciate that as humans, what a part of nature we are, and how the things that we want and the things that we advance towards,
Yeah.
are still very much sort of
If
influenced by nature.
if we treated it more like the Native Americans did, we'd
Hmm.
be further ahead right now. But no, we wanted to just push them aside because they were in the way.
Yeah.
I'm, I'm very proud of my ancestry coming out and working so hard to give me this. But I also have to acknowledge the land that they're on. I mean,
Hmm.
that wasn't ours to begin with. That, yes, we got to
Yeah.
homestead it, but the Native Americans were there first, and it's a hard one to deal with. It really,
Well, because it gets into conversations now about ownership and what gives humans the right to take ownership of space any more than any other animal or plant or part of nature. Like,
Mhm.
what makes us think that we deserve to be the ones deciding where things grow, how things grow, diverting rivers,
Yeah,
and how much of, what we're doing to force things to work the way we want them to work is really actually serving us, because it's obviously not serving the planet. I mean,
no,
we don't take care of our infrastructure that we did put in place that was not, of nature necessarily. So what kind of things can we learn from nature about how to move forward as a society in building our communities and creating our infrastructure? How do we be more harmonious to something that we don't own, but that we all exist on together?
well, it's kind of like we're turning full circle. We're coming back to trying to take care of the land. Well, that's where the Native Americans started. We've
Mhm.
done the whole big circle and we're coming back, but we're taking, I hate to say being taken over, but we kind of are by big corporations. But that still leaves this so many people, and be getting more and more in this day and age. There are people that are turning to nature, to spirituality, to things like this. That's where we started. When here we are going back there again. So if we'd have just listened in the first place. So maybe I'm not going back far enough. Maybe I need to go back even further to say my story. So another
Well,
research project.
I mean, even that would be, again, an excellent exploration, getting some of the indigenous people's stories from the US, from North America. And I mean, this is a thing that I do think about quite frequently as someone, like, because I am in South Dakota where I know there's a lot of farmland. Like, there are a lot of, I think the statistic I heard once is like 85% of what were monolithic structures that were done in the US, things like Serpent Mound that we still have, like, there were so many more of those that were just plowed over and destroyed to make farmland. And
Yeah.
that's so much history that we don't have anymore. How do you tap in? Like, this is why your brain is so brilliant and so necessary. You can remember the pockets of time when there was that building or that thing standing there very vividly, even though it's no longer in existence, but how can you get back far enough? Those people aren't around anymore for you to get those stories.
Yeah.
And you just have to hope there's like an oral tradition somewhere that someone shared it.
Yeah. Well, I think I don't know if the Native Americans still do. I know they used to. That was the keeper of the stories kind of thing. They always had somebody in the tribes or whatever, that society, that did that. I don't know if they still do. I'm kind of curious if they have keepers of the truths, their tribal truths.
Well, and I mean, I'm sure there are certain ones that do. I mean, let's plan that and call it in from the universe, that we get to do some kind of travel expedition where we
Uh,
get to explore different parts of the world and their indigenous people's stories, and who are the keepers of the truths and the lore, and what this used to look like before we had it all documented and measured on YouTube and social media.
yeah, I think we're not doing a real good job right now of taking care of Earth. But if my work can call attention just to wake people up, and hopefully wake the right person up, that can make the difference. I mean, you know, the whole world, yes, it would be nice if we all would wake up to this, but if just the ones we need would do something, maybe we could at least start saving this world or this era of life, whatever. So I don't know, my voice is like, I'm not passive. I shout from everywhere.
Well, and in the most, you know, passionate, expressive ways that you can, that people can connect into. And, you know, that I think is another part of the value of art and the value of what you're doing, is that, you know, you're absolutely right. You never know when the person's going to come along who's going to connect into the energy of a piece or some thought that comes from what your piece is about, right? That would trigger whatever it is in them that they're good at, to say, well, this is an idea that I would have, and I know how to do this, that, or whatever. It's like, how do you know that it's something I think about with sci-fi a lot? Like, how do I know that the things that I write into my sci-fi don't spark someone to invent something because they read that story and it's something so very beneficial that, like, oh, this is the thing that gave them the idea. And I don't know how to build it. I'm not an inventor. I'm not a mechanic, right? I don't have those skills. I have an imagination, and that's what I have to share.
That's part of being an artist, though. You can document and look at history. You can look at what's now. You can try to figure out and make comments. You can dream for the future, and you're doing the dream for the future. Doesn't mean you have to invent it, but you've invented the idea. Mm-hmm. Somebody's got to come and make it concrete. But without that idea, maybe they'd have never thought of that. I mean, so it's.
And that's why it's so important for us to remember ourselves to be nature and a part of an ecosystem. We're an ecosystem of consciousness. Like, not any one of us has all of the answers or solutions for the best path forward. It's only together in sharing what we each have to share that path forward reveals itself to us, right? And that's why it is such I think, a beautiful thing that you really do dive into the passion of what you do, and that you continue to do your art and share, even though I know that like you've said, your studio situation is a little bit, you might have to be in your garage soon doing art. And you know what? It's just another back to basics kind of thing, right? Get back to doing more with less.
At least I have a show coming up in, I got a Montana show, then September, then October, November, December, I'm in Arizona. And in January, February, March, I'm at the Holter Museum at Helena. So I don't have to house all my artwork. I can form it out for a while. The big pieces, they're going to go. So at least I can get them out. And I make them in sections that are no more than 40 inches wide. They're 38, 40, something like that, by 7 feet. And then I I attach them all together when I get there. They fit in my car. I can take them in my car now. So I mean,
I love this. I would love to see more of that. I would love to bring you back and kind of see more of that process and how you put those together. Because, like, right now I work with small art, but I always think they belong together in a big sort of puzzle piece.
Oh, it's fun to put a puzzle. Do that sometime. It's really, just start moving them. And a lot of them, I will have like 2 vertical or 2 horizontals and a vertical, and then maybe 4 little ones up here, and put it all together like a puzzle. And it all has more speakability. It speaks to me more because it's got happening.
Because somehow it's like I made these separate pieces, but they go together somehow because there's something I'm tuning into, and like, let's put it together.
And I went and got these big clamps, and screw the clamp as tight as I can get, and then I put a metal rod on there and screw down so they won't go apart. But to move them, I just take the screws out, go, and then clamp them again and screw it back. So
I love it.
Yeah, then you can do the big ones. But
I feel like this is a whole little mini documentary series. We need to, like, how do we get someone from Netflix to follow you around in these little art shows? And like, let's bring my art in and we'll do some art together. How do we put our pieces together? Maybe some of our stuff fits in a collective puzzle. That would be a fun thing to kind of experiment with.
Oh, that would. The group that I'm with the Royal College of Art, we're doing a show in London this summer of 26. And we have decided that we want to do a collaborative one piece. Now, we're from everywhere in the world, and we got all sorts of different things that are going on in our minds. How are we going to incorporate this as one piece? And so it's a challenge right now, is to figure out a way to do this.
Oh, I love that. I love that. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, they're a good group.
I do want to be mindful of your time because I can't believe we've gotten almost to an hour here. Like, I feel like you and I could talk for hours. So we're going to have to bring you back again because I love the stories. I love your energy. I love how much you really want to share history while still showing people that there are infinite possibilities ahead, even if we don't know what they are. And I really appreciate you sharing your creative mind with us today. So is there anything else besides those upcoming shows you mentioned you want to point people to?
No, I just enjoy being here. And I wanted to say one other thing, and that's with what Siddhat is doing with the gallery. So many galleries are having a difficult time now, and they go to the trade shows, but they're paying like $100,000 for a booth. So if they don't make their money, then they're going down, and then the trade shows are going. It's like very difficult situation going on. And I think what he's doing is another approach, and it might be the salvation we need for a new approach for the arts. So that was why I joined the group. I'm really interested in how he is approaching it. I think this might be the way. So glad to be a part of that group, and wonderful. Thank you for letting me be on your podcast. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol Hartman, for joining us today. I do really appreciate it. And yes, we'll have the links for your website and your LinkedIn profile for people to find you. And I'll definitely also have in the description Vedika Art Studios. I do think what Siddhat's doing is really very unique and exciting in, breaking down barriers with global art and making art more accessible and more collaborative in a lot of really interesting ways. So I do appreciate that. So thank you so much, Carol, for being with us. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for another episode of Franki's Open Mic. Do check out the rest of the podcast on Franki's Podcast Network. You can find more links in the description below. Until next time, big love bubbles to everybody out there. And Carol, big love bubbles to you for joining. Thank you so much.
Thank you.